wonderful guest has worked on such things as Avatar, Legend of Korra, which is one of my favorite series ever. Motor City, another fantastic one. Kipo and the Age of the Wonderbeasts, amazing. Star Trek Lower Decks, Bad Guys, Kung Fu, Cooking Girls, the movie, and also founded Warrior Painters, right? So this is a really this is such a privilege to have you on here, Angela.
It's an honor to be here, and Happy New Year's, everyone. Thanks for attending this webinar. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I want to pack in as much value to all the viewers as possible. So I would love to jump right into things with starting off with Warrior Painters. You started that about 6 years ago, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it should be about 7 now, or yeah,
Seven
about
years
7.
ago?
Yeah.
And that happens generally you get together every week?
Yeah, we get together every week, and we've been really lucky because we kind of now have these hosts that kind of like we go through every week. So each person kind of hosts every 2 months, but we do run activities every week.
Fantastic. So what I want to ask is, since you are very much a veteran of plein air and going outside and taking on the climate and everything, I would love to kind of start off with a simple question. What are some tips for painting outdoors? And I'll go through a couple different little sections that all revolve around painting outdoors.
Okay.
So in terms of clothes, any tips for clothes, hats, sunglasses, those kind of things?
When I was like in my early 20s, I was like, oh, I don't need sunblock. But now that I realize like you actually really do need sunblock, so don't forget that. A nice big sun hat would be great too. And then always painting in the shade is kind of nice so you don't get burned. And during the winter, I think jackets are really important because when you're standing there, you get really cold. So just be sure to bring those things. Sunblock's the most important though.
I see, I see. Uh, what about like canvases, the actual thing that you paint on? Any preferences, advantages to paper versus watercolor paper versus sketchbook versus canvas, whatever you might have tried.
That's a really great question. So I feel like I personally like a recycled paper, so it's usually brown, and I like it in a sketchbook form. So sketchbooks are easy to carry around. You don't have to worry too much about your painting smearing. And I use gouache, but I know oil painters sometimes bring those like boxes to keep their wet paintings in. But for gouache, I think sketchbooks are the easiest for myself.
So gouache because it dries very quickly, very easily, uh, and and the sketchbook on brown paper, sketchbook because it's easy to just close and walk away, especially
Mhm.
with painting and gouache. And brown paper, I would assume that that's because then you can easily go brighter as well as darker.
Yes, it's a really great middle tone. So, and it like sometimes when I paint with white paper, I just tone it with cad yellow, but this way you don't need to tone it at all.
And for drawing like so if I'm plein air painting, I'm gonna be more conscious of how wet I get the material, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you don't want to sit there waiting.
yes. It's kind of crazy too, because like every city kind of has its own climate. So in LA, thankfully it's really dry, so that doesn't usually kind of become an issue. But usually when I painted in Seattle, for example, it was really stressful because I had to wait for it to dry and I forgot I couldn't really go wet on wet. So you also have to think about where you are and maybe mixing your paint with a more pancake like batter consistency. That would be the best in my opinion.
Okay, very cool. And then your easel of choice, is there any particular things about the features of your easel that uh, would be good for people to know?
I think something light is the best and something compact. So my friends gifted me an Edge, and I really like that. I had a Strata before too, but that's way too heavy. And sometimes we like really hike into the mountains, so that might be too difficult to carry.
Fantastic. Um, are you like a gouache snob? Is there, is there any particular brand where you're like, that's the brand, everything else does not exist?
I used to, I feel like all gouaches kind of have their strengths, but I mostly use Winsor and Newton and Holbein. Um, I haven't tried other brands because that was just what was recommended to me, but I'm sure all brands they have their strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
And generally, do you mix any kind of thinner with your gouache, like
No, I
water or
haven't
thinner or
used that.
whatever?
Just water is like pretty good because like gouache is so versatile, so you could use it in so many different ways.
But this look like you use it very opaquely, as a lot of people do with gouache.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice because you could go thin like watercolor, but thick like acrylic. So it's really nice.
Fantastic. And you mentioned watercolor. I'm a big fan of watercolor. I know that in some things, brushes don't matter. In
Yeah.
watercolor, it does matter.
Oh,
It does
really?
matter a
Why?
lot. Oh, yeah, because imagine, so I should actually make a video about this because people ask, why do you buy such expensive watercolor brushes, right? And I think my most expensive one is literally like $1,000. Um,
Wow. I need to
and
see a
it's
picture of
because
this.
well, it's because the really, really good watercolor brushes can retain more water. And so imagine being able to make brush strokes and you just keep going and going and going without dipping again. And, right? It,
Hmm.
it's, it makes it gives you options now. It gives you way more options instead of a whole bunch of small to medium length brush strokes. All of a sudden you could do these giant long brush strokes with the same size brush.
I
Kolinsky brushes. That's my thing, is Kolinsky brushes.
I never actually thought about that, but I have to say watercolor I feel like is the most difficult one. So I need to check that out. That sounds really awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I bought them maybe 14 years ago, uh, and I still use them. So
Wow, with inflation, it must be 2000 now. So
who knows? I wouldn't even want to look. I wouldn't even want to look. Oh my goodness. Well, I wanted to talk about warrior painters a little bit more because, as you might know, and if you don't, that's totally cool too. In the very beginning of my career, I didn't have much of a career, so I started subway sketching. I used to sketch on the subways in Toronto every Sunday for about 2.5 hours. And that was for like 5, 6 years. Uh, in the very beginning, it was really just a way to keep me consistent, right? Because if you're the organizer, as you know, of the event, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to be the most consistent,
yes. Were you the
right?
one that made it cool though? Like sketching in a subway?
Well, I don't know if it's cool, but it was definitely really fun for us. One of the big things is like I like sketching people. It's very different than
That's hard, yeah.
sketching environments because they may look at you and be like, why are you sketching me? So it's not just the subject, right? It's also the interaction. So sketching with more people took away the intimidation.
That's a good point. Yeah. So have people approached you before? Because I do get kind of nervous when people walk up to me when I'm plein air painting, but I can't imagine if it's like an actual human coming to see what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. A lot of people will come up. Generally, they think we're some sort of school group on a
That's
school
true.
trip. You maybe you get that a little bit too. Um, but yeah, generally everybody has a really good experience, right? Because they're riding on the subway. They're waiting to go somewhere. Instead of just waiting, now they can converse with us and see something interesting.
That's really cool. So do people like pose extra for you sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. And it's funny because I always gravitate towards the more unique kind of people, right? I generally don't gravitate, I gravitate towards elderly people a lot of times
They're
because they
really
have all
unique.
these
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like wrinkles, they develop in a way that reflects your personality,
Hmm.
right? So like if you scowl a lot, you can tell later on when you're older that you
Yeah,
scowl a lot.
exactly.
So
That's true.
I like that aspect, but they don't usually try to pose because they don't think that you're sketching them. They think that you're sketching the typical beautiful kind of person sitting beside them, and I never do.
That's really fun.
But anyways, this is an interview, about you. So I definitely want to bring it back to when you first started Warrior Painters. What was that like? I'm assuming it was just you and your friends.
Actually, it was me, my wife, and my two dogs. So it was really,
Oh, it's even
really,
less.
yeah, it was really lonely. And and then after like a few times, my good friend Michelle Lynn started to join me. And then we started to make it really consistent. I think with her help, she's really organized and really awesome. So she and I built this together. We were really consistent, and people started to show up more often. And it's really cool because now we get to hang out with like at least 15 to 30 people each time.
Well, you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have well over 1,000 people around the globe in your community.
Yeah, so we do have a Discord and there's like about 9,000 people. We have events in Seattle, Van I think Vancouver, and then Toronto, like even in Australia now. So it's been really exciting to see people have the passion to go out and paint.
Fantastic. And um, I always find it very helpful, or I don't know if it really is helpful, but I always thought it was helpful, when people say, I want to start a sketch group. And then I tell them, you know, uh, be consistent, don't expect people to come.
Yes, that's a
Um,
good tip.
right? Because for me, it was the first year, hardly anybody would ever come out. And again, it was very similar to you. It's me and my wife, generally, or me and my roommate.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so hard to be consistent and so easily to be discouraged. I don't know if you felt this, but I feel like because I'm an artist, I am a lot more sensitive. There were a few times where I did want to give up, but thankfully with like the help of Michelle and my wife, it they kept me going. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Um, well, I do want to get to some questions as well and make this as interactive as possible. So please feel free to keep the questions coming, everybody. This one comes from Hannah. So Hannah asks, having painted in Seattle, did you ever have to battle extremely low temperatures? If so, how do you have any recommendations? I'm from Minnesota. Yeah,
Wow.
that definitely gets a good winter there. So I've had my paints freeze while plein air painting. This year, I'm determined to set up a system to keep the paints warm enough to keep using. Great question.
That's that's a really good question. So, maybe I'm not as skilled in that because we don't have really cold winters, but I did go to Bryce Canyon a few years ago, and then I did have to make sure my paints didn't freeze. One thing that I used instead of water is you could probably bring some vodka, so because it has like a lower freezing point. That's a good form of like water substitute. And I don't know if you've seen the jewel box cases that a lot of us use, Hannah, but if you squeeze in your paint and you just put in some clove oil, it will prevent it from molding. And because you're mixing it together as a puddle, it actually doesn't freeze either and it keeps it moist. So bring a spritzer bottle too, and then just be sure to spray it. And I think that should work in lower temperatures.
Wow, fantastic. Um, Next question is not a question, just a shout out. Andrew just says, no question here. I just love Warrior Painter, plein air.
Thank
So
you.
there you go. All right. Um, the thing is, I'd love to dive into this, is that that's not what you do for a full-time job,
Mhm.
Warrior Painters. You actually work on many different shows, like I mentioned in the beginning, features, series, whatever. Um, what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, that's a lot of people ask me that too, and it's just kind of funny. I feel like as artists, we have to do more art to just feel good about ourselves. So I work 8 hours, and at night I allocate 4 hours for myself to just kind of like either do gouache or digital painting. And it's kind of funny. I actually worked on Nico and the Sword of Light. So yeah, it's like really it's a small world, but yeah. So I
Wow.
just take some time after work to just do things that I really want to do, and I feel like I think something that worked really effectively for me is I would try to tackle different things at night. So let's say if I knew I was really weak at perspective, I would take a month and then just allocate the 4 hours after work to really like get better at it. And same for color, gouache. So just giving yourself time to do things that you really want is going to be really important for your mental health.
Now, the thing I'm hung up on is 4 hours. How do you manage to have 4 hours, outside of all your other stuff to do personal paintings every day? Because that's extreme. That's 28 hours in a week.
Uh, I have a lot of friends, so like the Discord actually really helps me. I met people like Amanda and stuff, and we are really passionate about art. So having each other sign on and then just keeping each other accountable, I feel like is really important. So have a painting buddy, have a study buddy, have an accountability buddy, I would say is going to be really helpful. It's just like you were saying, your roommate and your wife helped you keep the sessions going. I feel like just that accountability is like really important.
So I'm just assuming that your wife is very much a part of all this, or else, 4 hours a day after work, ignoring your wife and doing
Yeah.
paintings might be difficult, no?
Yeah, she's super supportive, and I think she's the type of person who's like, "Okay, I need some space from you too." So I think she likes it. She just watches her K-drama, and during the weekend we like go have fun and we go eat like delicious things. So it's nice. She's really supportive, and thanks for letting me ignore you.
Well, sounds like a match made in heaven. Let's go to another question here from Amanda. Okay, so Amanda says, "Hi, Angelus. You seem like a master at everything, painting, drawing, design, even dancing. What do you think newer artists should focus on, and what makes someone stand out when you're looking at their profile or social media?"
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. I think for newer artists, it might be difficult because, at least for me, even I get a lot of pressure looking at social media likes. But I think finding something that you really like while focusing on foundations will really make you shine through. At least in my opinion, I'm a really big believer of like foundations. So if you guys could have access, like Schoolism is a really good platform to find a lot of really great classes on how to get better at painting, drawing, perspective, and just focusing on that while gearing yourself towards like maybe if you're more interested in color and painting, um, that might like I feel like that consistency will help you stand out. So just not being afraid to post, showing people where you started and where you are now is going to be really important, in my opinion.
Do you have any kind of thoughts about how to not be too distracted by social media? You're mentioning that a little bit.
It's so hard for me, but I recently did this challenge called Coast Card that I set up. And whenever I do that challenge, I get like I feel like I get shadow banned, but it's fine. And I think just pumping stuff out daily and posting without worrying about that has really helped me get over it. So I feel like as long as I'm learning, that's what's most important. And just try to remember why you're doing art in the first place.
Wow. What's the process of selecting the subject?
I I feel like if you guys can make something super boring look awesome, then you guys won't be worried about painting anything. So I feel like that's another fun challenge. If you guys could like set up a still life that's really boring and try to like either make it interesting through color or design, you'll never run out of things to paint. So try not to paint the cool things, but try to make the boring things cool.
Wow. That one can be tough for some people because say they get some traction, they're painting monsters and stuff, and then they try to make a toothbrush very interesting. And then their, likes and everything kind of is dramatically a lot lower. They might feel like they're destroying their hard-earned kind of Instagram account,
Mhm.
perhaps. Do you have any thoughts about that? I'm just throwing a random scenario out there. Really.
I think that's a really good and true scenario. I think that yeah, I feel like as artists too, you guys have to like give yourself the space and time to make bad pieces or pieces that are less popular because I feel like there's always this kind of like quota where you have to maybe paint 10 mediocre paintings to get that like one really nice one. So, and I think showing people that process is important because we're not going to always be able to perform at like our 200%. So, you guys, I think kind of mentally wiring yourself to think like that is going to be healthier for yourself. I mean, that's how I deal with it. But and I feel like that's been working for myself.
I've been going through a thing where I'm just like, I need to stop caring about um, what my followers think as much. Like I still care, but I think I cared too much before, as many of us can get caught up in, especially uh, especially when you see your star rising, you're gaining traction. You don't want to screw it up. And then you start making paintings for the followers instead of the thing that got you there, which is painting toothbrushes and making them look cool or whatever, right? Things
Yeah.
that are in your heart.
I
Um,
that's kind of crazy hearing that from you because I feel like you're so big and I would not imagine you like thinking like that at all. So
oh,
thanks
it's
for telling
worse when you
me.
get more popular.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
oh, it's way worse um because when you have more I think I've talked to a bunch of people about this. When you hit about 150,000 followers, most people will start to see declines in their followers every time they post something new.
Really? Wow, that's
Yeah,
shocking. Okay.
most people, I would say. I've heard this from so many. I've heard this from Loish, and her stuff is
That's
incredible,
crazy.
you know. But there is that hump at a point where it's like you have to evolve your game. If you're gonna join the other people that are at like 200,000 followers, 1 million followers, you gotta evolve your game to their level.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
That's scary.
it is, but also that's why, people generally, I find, shouldn't put as much importance on satisfying their followers. They
Yes.
should do art because they feel compelled to make that art, right? Not for likes and stuff.
Exactly. I feel like also if you start to do that, it becomes a job rather than your passion. And then you really have to give yourself a space like your social media to do something that you're passionate about. So
Oh my goodness, yeah. And when did you start in the industry? Like how many years ago?
I started maybe 12 years ago, yes, or
12
13.
years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So you would totally understand this when I say like I there's times where I wonder, is there any perfect job?
No.
Because like when I thought about working in movies, that's the best thing ever. And I love it, don't get me wrong, but there's things that we don't really realize um, until you're in it, right? Of
Yes.
these like challenges and things, especially emotional challenges of they didn't pick my painting again. Why am I even hired for this, right? It's
Yes.
been 8 weeks or something like that. Uh, Many things like that. Um, yeah, Not a question, just kind of sharing a little
I
bit.
I think that's really good that you're saying that because I feel like a lot of people have like rose-colored glasses when they're like not in the industry yet and they're trying to break in, and when they get in, they're just really like defeated and hurt. So I just think every production has its challenges, but you'll probably make really great friends and get some really great experience. So try to be positive about that, even though it's extremely hard and there is no perfect production. So just be ready for that
Yes.
reality. Yeah.
Well, and I say this with like a humongous appreciation and love of my industry and what it does, because for me, like the industry that we're in, uh, the reason why a lot of people might say, oh, there's this challenge and that challenge is because our industry is filled with extreme highs, like when you work on Legend of Korra and everybody's just like, oh my God, that's amazing, or bad guys or whatever, and then extreme lows as well when your show
Yes.
gets canceled or whatever. So it does make sense that if there are these extreme highs, then there will be extreme lows. But then also what you're saying, um, making great friends and things like that. A lot of times the really great friends are made in the really tough battles.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So that's the silver lining, right? That's like the best thing. Because you guys get to like bond together and you're like, oh my God, that was a very traumatic experience, but at least we have each other. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Um, in the very, very beginning, what was your first job?
I actually worked at an indie game studio, but then shortly after that, like I only worked there for 6 months, I think, and then I switched over to Titmouse for Motor City. So that was my first animation gig.
Oh, cool. What was the biggest surprise about working um, on Motor City in a production that you didn't really realize? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
I thought animation, like the guild was really nice, and then I thought just the amount of work we had to pump out was kind of shocking. Like for TV series, I think people don't realize, but a lot of the times, sometimes jobs expect about 5 backgrounds per week. So I feel like it was kind of like boot camp training for me, and I really like that because I felt like I wasn't really strong in environments. So that's why I chose to become a background designer.
Wow, that's I worked in I worked in television in the very, very, very beginning of time where we're using pencil and paper.
Oh
But
my God. That's cool.
yeah.
I wish they did that now, actually.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's kind
Yeah.
of like a big cycles for a lot of things, including art and shows. Um, Love to get to some more of these questions. They're piling in. Christopher. Okay, so Christopher asks, are there any specific self-study exercises you can recommend or any tips that helped you out for somebody trying to design background layouts on their own? Um, any tips for that? Is it difficult to practice them without some kind of director telling you when you've hit the mark?
That's a really great question that I feel like some background aspiring background designers run into. So thanks for asking it. The first self exercise that I feel like would really help is learning how to draw through your objects and how they sit in space. So if you're really struggling with perspective and drawing backgrounds, the best thing and I actually teach a background design class. The first thing that I try to get out of the way is to figure out how things are placed and fitting in space. So drawing through is really helpful. And some of my students made a meme about me where they say that I'm like the scale tyrant. So learning how to place things in space, especially humans, is going to be important. And then there's an Andrew Loomis book that talks about this. That's really great. And you could go to like I don't I forgot what it is, but just Google Andrew Loomis. His PDFs are online, and learn how to place a figure in space because that's super duper important. And I think for the last part of your question about hitting the mark, I think exercising your creativity and then just pushing your ideas really, really far each time is going to help you. So the way that I view each piece is, did I accomplish the thing that I wanted to learn? So, Christopher, maybe if you wanted to focus on learning how to place objects in space properly, it could be one background. The second background could be learning how to place scale properly into space. And then the last one is combining the two while pushing your creativity. And you'll know when you're done, when you feel like you kind of are close to what you wanted to get to. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, in the computer, you can just make a perfect ellipse, but I hear you're a bit of a tyrant with ellipses as well.
Yes. I'm really specific about my ellipses too.
I remember before starting drawing, especially with life drawing and even like animation and stuff when I used to do that, I would take out a piece of paper and I start making these circles and try to make them as perfect as possible, and then slowly start to make them into ellipses until you get a line, and then you'd go back out and then you do the same thing horizontally until you can do another line. Did you ever do any interesting kind of exercise like that
That's
to warm
really
up?
cool. Is that just to warm up your arm or?
Yeah, yeah, to get, because I like doing good ellipses as well and good circles and
Okay.
stuff like that. And yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of that one, but I used to. I'm not really good at figure drawing, but I used to do like a lot of gestures, or I don't know if you've seen those industrial design things where you draw two dots and then you connect the line and then the
Mm.
small ellipses. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I would used to do. Yeah,
Oh, okay. That's a
yeah.
great one too, for sure. Um, here's a fantastic question that we should all pay attention to, coming from Kate. How do you stay strong and avoid injury with so much repetitive work? What do you
That's
do?
that's actually kind of funny. I'll let you get guys in on a little secret. I actually have spinal arthritis from sitting too much. So, I have issues sometimes like walking and like the doctors are like, "You're so young, like what happened?" But try to stand up and stretch. And I'm also like trying to force my friends to work out with me more. So like every day at 6, Monday to Friday, I'm like, let's do abs, let's lift weights. So I feel like that has really helped me alleviate a lot of the pain. So I guess the answer is, Kate, you just have to get swole. So yeah.
I had all sorts of back and arm issues for about 10 years.
How did you
Uh,
fix that?
I tried everything, one thing after another, an acupuncturist, different acupuncturists, massage therapy, things in combination. In the very end, it was physiotherapy with exercise.
Okay, what kind of exercise do you do? Are you like swole too? Do you have a six pack?
Oh, I don't, I'm about mobility,
Oh, okay,
so like
okay.
stretching, a hell of a lot of stretching or exercises in stretched poses is really good for extra mobility.
Like
Because usually
Pilates?
when people, I don't know, I had never done Pilates, but there's this guy, I forget his handle. He's on TikTok called Movement by David or something like that. And he's all about movement as well. Um, and so a thing about stretching is that most people stretch and they're not flexing that muscle, right? As they're stretching. If you think about it, if you go like this, are you flexing this arm? No, you're just letting it hang, right? Letting it
Mm-hmm.
loose and you're stretching. And the whole entire thing is if you are flexing and stretching at the same time, right? Then you start to gain strength in flexed positions
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I could kind of feel it. Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
in stretched positions, I should say,
Hmm.
flexed position.
So you're like
Yeah.
strengthening and mobility at the same time.
Right. So, it's like instead of trying to go as far to do the splits as you can, I can't do the splits, but I don't do that sitting down and trying to spread my legs out like that against a wall or something. Instead, I stand up I wear slippery socks and I slowly part my legs. So there's a point where it starts to hurt and you got to flex hard to keep them together or else you'll just slide apart.
That's a really good tip. I'm gonna do that today because my I think like loosening up my legs will help my back. So
Yeah, yeah, totally. My goodness. You're too talented. We need you around to paint for many, many decades.
well, I'll do the sock stretches. Yes.
Okay, well, a bunch more questions coming in, so I want to get to some of these as well. Andrew, I'm all about improving and consistency. What's the best way to manage time, resources, and investments to keep going on my journey?
Investments as in financial. I'm an
I'm not
artist.
sure.
I'll just say that. Yeah. So I don't know about that one. But I think one of the key things that like I'm trying to get as I guess consistency and making things like the easiest as possible. So Andrew, maybe if you do want to get gouache ready, I've noticed an obstacle for me is if I don't have things properly set up, I'm just not going to do it. And I'm just going to go chill with my wife and watch K dramas. But if you make everything as easy as possible, so maybe the night before, after you're done painting, just get everything ready for the next day. That would really, really help. Resources, I think there's just so many things online that you could look for, find a community that can help you, and just finding friends that would help is going to be another really important key thing. So there's a lot of great discords. I see that the Lightbox one is always so active, and you guys are always doing really fun events, so that would be a fun one too.
Fantastic. And as you mentioned, there's also Warrior Painters Discord as well. Fantastic. Okay. Uh, let's go to Atlas. I just found out about Warrior Painters through this webinar and would love to get involved in the local Toronto community. However, I'm a little new at navigating Discord. Do you have any guidance as to how to navigate Discord to find the meetups or just to find the meetups?
There's some so if you maybe if you at me later, I could direct you because it's kind of complicated. Like Discord has a gazillion channels, so it's really hard to get through. Just at me and I'll help you.
Fantastic. I also want to plug whatever it is you would like to plug. I know you teach classes, warriorpainters.com, right? I
Oh,
hope I didn't get
Warrior Art Camp. But yes, I do teach
Warrior
classes
Art
and
Camp.
yeah, it's really fun. So yeah, it would be really cool if you guys could join.
All right, fantastic. Uh, Hannah asks, what has been the biggest setback in your career so far? You did mention arthritis, spinal arthritis. How did you overcome it, and what did you learn from the experience? Are there
Um,
any other setbacks or that one or whatever you want to talk about?
I think it's just I felt like as an artist after working for a bit, I felt like I kind of plateaued for a while. So
Mm.
after I plateaued, I was like going through the I need to like find my soul type of phase. So I decided to go to Shanghai for a bit. And I felt like going to another country and then just working under like a different type of work schedule pushed me and made me grow a lot as a human. So I think that plateauing, I'm starting to feel it again, but I'm starting to get on really exciting projects that are challenging. Um, I think plateauing is always going to be an issue, but try to find projects that challenge you and put you outside of your comfort zone so that it doesn't just seem like a job and there's something that you can get out of it as well.
I love actually taking classes for that reason.
Yes,
Whenever you're plateauing and you take a class, you learn something new and that creates options,
yes,
options that you didn't have
exactly.
before.
Yes, yes. And it's just kind of funny because you're just like, I think I know more about art, but the more classes you take, the more you realize that like you just don't know anything at all. So I don't know if you feel like that, Bobby, but I just feel like the more I draw, the less I know and the less confident I am in my art.
And at the same time, I don't know if you feel this, I feel that. And I also feel like a lot of times I'm like, but everybody knows this. like those kind of things. Like you find some new discovery and then you're like, oh, that's so, like I don't know. I feel like a lot of times when I'm teaching people, the harder thing for me now is like understanding the things that may have come very difficult for beginners. And, we kind of overlook those things.
Yes, that's a really good thing too, because like you take for granted all the hard work you put in. So you feel like when you say this, you're just being redundant. But I think it's actually really helpful to tell people sometimes.
You know what? So one of my buddies, this person named Craig Mullins, right? And you know him.
Oh,
I remember having conversation where he was like, everybody knows this stuff. I'm like, no, they don't. They have no idea, and uh you sent me a photo that was a pretty epic photo of you, Craig Mullins, and James Gurney, Jeanette Gurney, all in the same thing. I don't know if there's anybody else, but those people right there is enough for you to forget an entire crowd behind, you know. So can you tell me a little bit about that moment there? Like that was at Lightbox, yeah?
yeah. So what I really enjoy about Lightbox is that there's so many people coming in from so many different places that we can make meetups possible. And that time I was like really nervous. I'm like, we were trying to do like a taco night for warrior painters and warrior art camp. And I just asked my wife, I'm like, Kaylee, I'm talking to Craig Mullins right now. Should I ask him if he wants to come to the taco night? Like, I'm 100% sure he's going to say no. And she's like, just do it. Like, you have nothing to lose. He'll probably just say no. And when I asked him, he's like, oh, that's like actually my favorite restaurant from Art Center. So I was like, what the heck? And then while I was at it, because we were doing the paint session at the city hall, I was like, should I ask James Gurney and Jeanette? And Kaylee's like, yeah, just go for it. And when I asked them, they all came. Everybody was so happy to see them. They were too nervous to talk to all of them, but it was just a fun night, and it was just really cool to hang out with everyone there. Yeah,
Were
it
you
was crazy.
nervous? Like, did you feel like you were yourself at that time, or did you feel a little too nervous? Or
I think I was too nervous. Like, okay, Bobby, I was really nervous for this interview. I had trouble sleeping too, but I think I'm just really
oh,
introverted and like I tend to have a lot of anxiety. So I wasn't myself, but I gathered the courage to talk to them. So it was still really exciting.
well, I can't tell, just to
Thank
let you
you.
know.
Thank you.
Hannah says, don't be nervous. You're doing great.
Thank you.
All right. Sean says, love
Plain air
plein air
pearl.
pearl.
Yeah.
This is kind of a painting process question for plein air. I'm just curious, what are the things you strive to establish in the beginning stages of your plein air painting?
That's a really good question too. So I feel like a lot of the times when we're out painting, the most difficult thing is to not chase the light. If you guys are starting off plein air painting, it's going to be really beneficial for you guys to do kind of like the black and white studies. So I find thinking about it using design theories like simple versus complex or straights versus rounds is really important to establish a clear thumbnail read. After you guys have that, try to apply color to it with paint. So have a clear design and don't chase the light is going to be the most helpful tips for you guys for, in my opinion, for plein air painting.
So in other words, like the don't chase the light part, is that like you're seeing where the shadows are going to go, so you maybe make the shadows in your painting a little bit further down, so by the time it's like an hour from now, it's kind of caught up to what you're doing. Do you
Or
ever
like
do that?
I had the bad habit of like just painting the light as it's going. So it's just like
Mm.
a mix match of lighting scenarios in the painting. So um I try to stay true. Sometimes I do that where I'm painting ahead of time, but most of the times I'm just painting like the shadows as I see it being at the current moment. So just remembering to stick to one thing or else you're just going to get really overwhelmed.
Okay. So does that mean that when you paint the tree and paint the shadow and it takes you a while to get to the car is actually showing a shadow that's different than the tree, like
Yeah,
of a
I
different.
think that is, yeah, that's kind of a good way to explain it. So just make sure when you're designing your black and white thumbnails, you have the light and shadows all kind of consistently laid out so that when you're applying it to your paint, it's going to be a lot easier.
Okay. Because the other side of things is I'm thinking that maybe it's more like you're using what you see as inspiration for your creation. Your
Mhm.
creation stands alone from this, and this is heavily inspiring what you're painting.
Yeah, that's another way to approach it. Sometimes I do that too. It's just, I guess, really hard when things are constantly changing. So I just make it like easier for myself and just set up like a certain design, which could be inspired by nature and not necessarily 100% copying. But yeah, it's kind of depending on the scenario.
Do you also study from photos?
Yeah, I love studying from photos, so I don't have to go outside in the cold weather. And just recently, I've been doing more photo studies because I haven't had time to go out as much.
You know, when I was doing all those subway sketchings many, many years ago, I felt a giant growth artistically in a way that was so unique and original, I felt, because I wasn't learning it from some lessons that somebody was teaching me, a book that I was reading, but through doing, failing, experimenting, and learning from life itself. Uh, what was your biggest learning experience? Maybe it's not from plein air. Maybe it's a certain period of time during college or whatever, but what was your biggest learning experience as an artist?
I think for me personally, I know a lot of people are just like naturally really talented when they're in college. I feel like I was never that type of artist who just started off really good. So I felt like it was a really big struggle for me where I had to always put in 300 times more of the effort compared to like the very talented artists. So I feel like everything started to click together maybe more towards my like mid 20s. So that I feel like the biggest thing learning is just when I started to really study how to draw backgrounds and how when I really started to kind of study color and just putting myself in these uncomfortable situations and pushing myself out of my comfort zone was really helpful. So I think that was just coming after just challenging myself. So that's why I have that same mentality now, where I just want to like keep pushing myself to do different things. Did that answer the question?
Sure, yeah. Do you does your let me word this properly. Does your wife, if I asked her, is Angela really tough on herself? What do you think she would say?
Yes, I think she would say yes.
Okay.
I'm
Can you
probably
give me an
like a
example?
yeah, I'll sometimes I'm just like in the corner. I am just like yelling at myself under my breath, and then like sometimes I'd be crying, and she's just like, can you just like go to sleep? And then when you wake up tomorrow, you'll see that this painting isn't bad. And I'm like, I don't trust you. And then I go to sleep and I wake up the next day. I'm like, okay, it wasn't as bad. And she's like, you need to learn how to be nice to yourself. So that happens quite frequently.
Yeah, well, you know, a big part of a lot of people's journeys to get to where they got to is not the same thing that they need to do to maintain a long, lovely, happy career.
Yes.
You know, some of us are big risk takers and maybe also quite skilled or whatever and put in the effort, so we climb up very quickly. But if you keep taking risks at a point, it might hurt you, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I guess you find it. a little tough as well to just chill out and do, um, I don't know, like less focused on your career, focused on art, and just like talking with your cousin that's an accountant, that has nothing to do with art?
I feel like it's gotten a little bit easier. I used to be like way crazier. When my friends travel with me, I try to jam like 20 things in. So I try to do two things now. So I think it's more like of a habit that I need to kind of break. And then it's really hard. I don't know if you feel like this, but when artists aren't drawing, they feel really guilty about themselves. And
Oh my
yeah.
God, yes.
Yes. So just remember you have to take time to recharge and regroup, or else you're just gonna go through this like really bad spiral that goes downwards.
Last year I had to get like emergency surgery on both my eyes.
Oh no, is it okay
Um,
now?
yeah, they're
Okay,
fine.
okay.
They're fine. There are holes. There's like a hole in one eye and a hole in the other eye. If they got bigger, I don't know, something about the wall that separates the two things on either side would start to, you know, they'd start to mix and you could go blind.
I'm glad you
Um,
fixed it.
right, but I bring this up because the identity of being an artist is so intertwined, right, with us, right? I'm sure that makes a lot of sense to you. When I was going through that, I was like thinking, what if I'm not an artist anymore? What if later I can't be an artist?
I
Um,
always think about that.
you do? Oh my
Yeah.
God, tell me more.
It's just like you just feel like you've poured everything you know into like this one thing that like I feel like I really can't do anything else. And I'm just like, Kaylee, who is my wife? I'm like, if I lose my hands or if I can't see or if I just can't move anymore, like I don't know what you'll have to do to take care of me because I'm just going to be completely useless. So, but I don't know. It's a really scary thought. It's also
It
scary
is.
how the only time we can take a break is when we're sick. Have you thought about that too?
It's I've been, yeah, yeah. I'm a workaholic, as you probably guessed. So it's taken a lot of active to effort to try to relax,
Yes.
effort to try to do things where it's not like beneficial for my career, just beneficial for my soul.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do that. Yeah.
Your upbringing, was it a very strict kind of, like, I know I got my work ethic and all that stuff from my parents,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's probably also why I am obsessed about work and, have a hard time or harder time chilling out and stuff like that. What was your upbringing like?
Oh, actually, my mom was like pretty chill and supportive about art. I think I don't know where this comes from. Maybe I when I was growing up, I played a lot of JRPGs and I was like really anal about everything. So I think actually gaming formed how I became like now. Yeah, so games help guys. Yeah, and I think after that I art center actually really helped with that as well. It helped me with time management and I saw how hard my peers worked and that pushed me even more. And I think also doing sports kind of helped me too, like that competitiveness.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of competitiveness, usually like for me, I'm usually doing character design or something like that, where there is a bit of a competition sometimes because somebody else is doing the exact same assignment as you.
Yes.
For your regular jobs, what does it mostly consist of?
Um, I do everything from like small props from a movie to color scripting to even like blue sky development now. So there is competition, especially I think during the blue sky phase.
Mm,
And that's really scary because you're just never too sure what the showrunner or directors want. and you're just like, am I going to be able to hit the mark? It's so difficult. So yeah, that's really competitive and fun at the same time.
One of my dear friends that I love very much is Luc de Marchelier.
Oh my God, I love
And
it.
yeah, I just want to, but he can feel kind of intimidating sometimes. He can, he's got the beautiful beard and stuff, and it seems so like he knows his stuff. Um, did you ever get intimidated by him, especially in the beginning?
Of
He's done a
course, like
bunch of
when I first
things.
saw his work, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm working with him." And then but I found out that he just looks tough on the outside, but he's actually a really big softie. We actually connected by talking about plein air painting, and he's just really
Ah,
sweet.
yes.
Yeah. He's really
Yeah.
awesome.
I love his. I actually have one of his plainer paintings in the back. I don't know if you.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
no
right behind my
way.
head. Where is it? Doop, this one.
Oh, that's so cool. He's such a
Yeah.
great plein air painter too.
Mm-hmm. And a great person.
He is.
And what was your involvement in the bad guys? So you did visual development
Mhm.
and anything else, or was that the main thing?
It was the main thing. I came a little bit early on, so they were trying to figure out the style. Flow in the end kind of set the whole style, but like, it was just fun, kind of like seeing it from the start to end. And I think they took some things from me, but not too many. Flow decided the entire style, but it was just really cool making the sets sometimes. So that was really fun.
What was the elevator pitch to explain the style that they were striving for? Do you remember that?
I think Flow just has this like really naturally fun and loose style. So Pierre wanted to really like push the visual language and what they could do with CG. So it's not like smooth and fully rendered. There's some line elements and they were just really trying to go for that. It was really cool to see them develop it.
If to me, like the bad guys, it felt like something that goblins would make if you let them all kind of develop and then you bring them back as professionals and go, okay, make a movie. That's
Yes.
the style, that's the vibe that I kind of got from it, and it's
That's a really
fantastic.
good description. Yeah.
uh what programs do you use? Do you use any, what are the 2D programs, and do you use any 3D programs?
I recently tried to learn some Blender, but I think I forgot all my hotkeys. So I'm not too good at 3D, but for 2D, I mostly use Photoshop and Procreate. Yeah. I use
Oh,
some
okay.
Clip Studio too. Yeah.
I've never used that before. What are the advantages of Clip Studio versus the others?
I think Clip is like really affordable, especially for students, so that's great. And the functions are like pretty much really similar to Photoshop. So it's a good alternative. Yeah.
Mendel is saying in the chat there, no heavy paint. I'm a little surprised that you haven't
Oh,
messed around with heavy paint as
I
well.
use heavy paint. I totally forgot. Sorry. And
Oh,
I
okay.
used Webby paint once, but I haven't used it as much recently because it changes a lot. I use a
Okay.
lot of heavy paint. Yeah.
And you do so many traditional paintings. Do they try to word this in the right way? Like, what do you do with all of them? I know you do gallery shows, but I think you probably paint way more than the paintings that you put in a gallery show. So what do you do with all these paintings?
Thankfully, some of my friends would buy them, or I just like leave them in my drawer when it's not
Wow.
like yeah. So
Uh,
it's yeah.
we're
That's
we were talking about Craig Mullins earlier. I remember him saying that uh, by the end of Art Center, he had so many paintings that he did that he borrowed his friend's truck, loaded them into the back of the dump truck, and he's crazy. He's special. He's not crazy. He's special. He took it to the dump and went into the back of the dump truck and kicked them all out
he
into the
could have
dump.
given it to us.
Yeah, and then he left. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah,
Maybe he paints bigger. Thank God gouache paintings are really small.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Have you ever exchanged paintings with somebody for their art or bought some art that has special meaning to you?
Yeah, I think the coolest thing that so for Coast Cards, what we do is we paint for 30 days, 31 days. If you paint it, we can exchange stuff. So I've been exchanging paintings for the past 4 years with people, and that's
Oh,
been like
wow.
really, really fun. And then I always buy people artwork from people I admire as well. So recently I'm really into Jeremy Miranda. His work is really cool. So I've been getting some of his paintings too.
Wow. Um, you've been in the game for a good while now. Uh, if you could take us to any part of your art journey, you know, just to observe, not change anything, where and when would you want to revisit?
Um, that's a tough question. Maybe when I was in Shanghai, that one was really crazy because I feel like a lot of the times people in America take for granted like the working conditions. In Asia, they like really push you. It's really challenging, but of course you learn so much from it. So I'm really, really glad that I had that experience. And I try to tell people if you guys have the opportunity, working in Asia is very hard, but it's really rewarding.
Is your family from China, Taiwan, Hong Kong?
Oh, my family's from Taiwan, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
born in Taipei,
Oh my God, cool. Yeah, they're from no, Beito, yeah.
Kaohsiung.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. And you know how to speak Chinese.
Yeah, it's not super good, but I think conversational is fine.
But you were born in America or?
Yeah, yeah. I was born in LA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hardly anybody's actually like born in LA and they're still in LA, no?
Yeah.
Everybody
Everyone
seems to be
left.
from a different place.
Yeah.
Uh, why don't we go to some more questions here? Because we do have some really great ones. Christopher asks, I'm sure this is going to help a lot of people out. When you want to start something like a sketch group or warrior painters or any kind of art group, how did you try to get new members? Did you post on any specific websites?
Okay, so when I first started, Facebook was still a thing. So we made our post on Facebook. But now that you guys have Discord, I feel like it's actually a lot easier. So maybe starting from like the basic things where it's like Instagram and then trying to let people know about it. So word of mouth. Then consistently making the events on Discord weekly will definitely help. And just being consistent, that's going to be the key to make it survive for a long time.
Fantastic. Michelle asks or says, Hi, Angela, love your paintings. They've been a consistent delight for me every time I log on to Instagram. Can you talk about your major milestones in your 12 years of working? Any turning points that were like big moments for you, personal or professionally?
I think the major milestones was I think getting on Legend of Korra was like a really big milestone for me. Just really learning under really hard working like not conditions, but it was just a very challenging show. So I really had to push myself. That was really fun. And then going to Shanghai after. And then another one was being able to go from TV to feature was another really big milestone for me because that was always a big dream of mine. And that really helped me because I think it really pushed me into getting into painting. So I found that really helpful. And I think that's what when you guys kind of direct yourself and give yourself goals for what you want your job to be, it's really important because it'll push you to do things that you're usually not comfortable doing. So I feel like personally, I learned how to take risks, and then artistically, I also grew as well. Yeah.
Any goals for this year?
I want to eventually become a production designer for feature, so I think I'm going to try to do that. And I think working on soft skills next and team dynamics will be really helpful for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, soft skills. I've always wondered like if that's something that um everybody can learn, because like some people, like everybody can improve to a point, but soft skills, it seems like some people are just really naturally good at it, almost like in a way where it's like some people are introverted, some people are extroverted.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, some people are definitely better than the others, but it is kind of a hard thing, isn't it? Because sometimes if you aren't just naturally able to speak a certain way, it is hard to kind of like change the way you talk. So I think it is just more about improvement. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. That one
Yeah.
is, I constantly wonder about that because it takes up so much of your, like you need it. If you're running a business, you need a lot of soft skills. So
Yes.
that's why. Um, Not sure how to pronounce this next person's name, so I'm just gonna read their question. And if you hear that your question, this is for you. So what is your favorite thing about teaching and art directing?
Um, what I really love about teaching is just connecting with the students and then also watching them grow. A lot of the times, I think the thing that makes me the most happy is when someone starts off saying like, "I don't think I can get a job," but then they like land a job. Sometimes right after my classes, and that just makes me so happy. And then I build a friendship with like all my students too. I just love all of them. Watching people grow is definitely my favorite thing. And for art directing, I also like hiring people who are green and then working with them to kind of build their skills, to give them the opportunities that maybe um, just to put them in the industry because getting into the industry is so difficult, especially right now with the lack of jobs. I think for the art directing too, it's about watching people grow and then working as a team and then developing like a really, really good relationship with everyone.
Fantastic. When you're thinking about the future of our industry, I'd love for you to make a little prediction where we can kind of like take a look at it like 10 years later. Oh, do you have any predictions about things that are going to come into existence regarding our industry in the next 10 years?
I am kind I am worried about AI. I'm not too sure how that's gonna like take up the industry. I hope it doesn't because artwork is so beautifully created by humans for humans, right? So I don't think it should take the place of humans at all. And I hope the industry will hold people accountable for not using it. But I feel like a lot of things are gonna get shipped overseas to like studios outside of America because
Hmm.
I feel like studios are trying to cut more costs now. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's just kind of my observation. In the past decade that I've been working, I feel like there's been lesser jobs in America because of the prices.
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, I definitely noticed since I started till now, there are way more artists
Yes.
and there are way, way more productions that are happening than when I started.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah, because before, it was like, okay, what are the three animated movies that are going to come out this year? That was it. Sony at the time, they didn't make a new movie for like 8, 10 years because they kept changing head of production. So it's just Netflix wasn't making any original things. And it's
That's true.
DreamWorks, Disney, Pixar. That was it. That was pretty much it. So if from a more kind of expanded view, I see something actually, I see it climbing. And I think that if there are less jobs for us in the studios, it will bite them in the butt because we have so much capabilities of creating our own content now, especially with something like Procreate Dreams can make broadcast quality animation,
Yes. Yes.
right? That will be making a ton of that content. Creators will rise quite a lot in the next 10 years and will gain tremendous influence and power. That's my
I,
bold prediction for the next 10
I
years.
agree with you too. Yeah, so from like outside of the industry, I do think we're gonna have a lot more really great indie stuff coming out, and I'm really excited for that because yeah, studios should remember that artists are valuable, and if you guys don't use us, we probably will do some indie stuff for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say, I forget what was the reason. Was it like 9/11 or Netflix coming in? But there was something that happened like over a decade ago where that was like the first like what's happening to our industry. And then very shortly after, all these smaller studios start popping up. Um, even Tonko House now is over 10 years old, I believe.
Oh, really? Oh, I had
Yeah.
no idea. That's so cool.
Hmm. I'm pretty sure. Like schoolism is 18 years old.
Wow, that's really impressive. Congrats.
Thanks. Uh, yeah, so I actually feel like, okay, well, if it's either the studios will get their stuff together and you know, really invest in great content made by people, or it's going to be a hell of a lot of creators starting to create their own stuff,
Yes.
and then the studios will be carved out of the situation, or will have to pay a good sum to have us play in their playing field.
That's true.
Yeah.
I I hope they do spend more time with people because I think that would be really, really cool. And what I mean by like the jobs lessening, I just meant like in LA, I guess, but I've noticed like a lot more studios popping up in Canada and stuff. Is that true or
You know what? I'm not too sure. Canada, I'm away from all the craziness. I just want to hang out with my dog and my wife and hang out in my little studio and stuff. So I'm not too sure, but like um my wife right now, she's working for a studio in London.
Oh, that's
It's
so
like,
cool.
yeah, they are popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
A lot
So I
of
think just maybe in LA there will be less, but I think globally there's going to be a lot more.
hmm.
Yeah. But who
I feel
knows?
like LA is definitely the hub though, so it's like the tide goes out, it'll come back in.
Yes, yes. I hope
But who
that's the
knows?
case too. Yeah.
That's what happened the first time. That's what happened the first time.
Exactly. Yes.
Um, why don't we go to some more questions? I want to give a big shout out to Hannah because Hannah's been supplying us with a lot of really wonderful questions. So, how do you feel about other artists using your work for master studies, assuming credit is given? Do you, and then I don't know if this is a continuation, I'm just going to read it. Do you still paint master studies yourself? What other types of exercises do you do regularly to keep your skills sharp?
That those are really great questions, and thank you to Hannah. You are asking awesome questions. So I don't mind people doing studies of my work. I think it's really cute and flattering. So when people do it, I'm actually really happy about that. And I still do some master studies. And the type of exercises that I do when it comes to master studies is really learning how to simplify and design. So it's not just trying to copy things exactly, but I'm trying to understand through the design theories that I know how to simplify, organize, and just create hierarchy between like what is viewed within like a study. So I hope that makes sense. Just being able to design is going to be important for me. So it's not necessarily about my rendering skills, but quick decisions and clear reads.
And in terms of like your professional work, are you always kind of doing things that are environment heavy, or do you also do like storytelling, character design, other things?
I've done so I hope nobody gives me character because I'm not that good at it. But I've definitely done story moments and moments with characters inside of an environment. I also do like color scripting and lighting keys. So, but primarily, I'm usually used for like making sets and blue sky ideas.
Now, this is something I feel like I know the question to, or the answer to, but I feel like it's important to ask you anyways, Angela. You said you were going from TV, you had a goal of getting into features. Was it your TV portfolio that got you into features, or did you have to create extra art, either because you just did because it's warrior painters and you just want to do your thing? Um, is it like the TV portfolio, or was it your personal portfolio you feel that did more to get you across and into feature?
That's like a question that a lot of people ask too, and I think that's so great because there is kind of a differentiation between what people are looking for when they're hiring for work. So I think for me personally, it was my personal portfolio that got me hired onto feature. And for all of you guys who are trying to break in, I think a lot of recruiters are actively looking at like social media and your personal portfolio to kind of understand what type of artwork you do and do you do it in your spare time. So I think because people saw me doing a lot of work in my spare time, they're like, okay, I think she has potential to do like some painting work. And because of that, those opportunities, like I got into feature. Another thing that's really important is to let people know what you want. So I wanted to art direct in TV, and I let the recruiters at DreamWorks know that that was something I really wanted to do, and just being vocal about that. So when the opportunity does arise, people will remember you and then like place you at the job when it's needed. Yeah.
Awesome. Um, there's a bunch more questions, so I want to make sure I try to get through all of
Okay.
these. Hope that's cool. Next one is from Christopher again. So Christopher asks a good question. When trying to learn painting, it can be very demotivating when we go out and it doesn't look the way that we want, especially when plein air painting, it's hard. How did you, how long did you have to stick it out uh, before your paintings start to look good?
So for me, I think painting was always a struggle because I feel like I'm more of a drawer. Um, Painting is kind of different than drawing where you have to learn and to think about things in big masses rather than fine detail. I know drawing is also about that too, but painting is more about like bigger ideas. So it took me a long time to kind of make that switch. And it's sometimes for me, drawing isn't, or painting and getting better isn't about only mileage, but you have to kind of do the things that I tried to mention earlier, where set a goal for yourself. So maybe this time you want to focus on like value design, and then the next time you can focus on color. So each time you have something really clear that you want to accomplish, it'll make it more possible to learn and grow. And it is really demotivating because I feel like all of our art goes through that awkward teenage phase. So just really try to push through it. Remember, we have a quota of bad paintings that we have to go through to get to that like one really good one that gives you hope to push through. And as long as you're creating these goals for yourself and remembering that, I think you could really push yourself out of that like art block phase.
I love that idea of you have a quota of bad paintings to make,
That's what I tell myself. I
right?
don't know if it's true, but yes.
That's a great way to frame it, though, right? Like I remember when I was starting Lightbox, I was like, nobody knows what Lightbox Expo is going to be. I'm talking to a bunch of people that represent companies where they don't know who I am. So then I would just think to myself, okay, today I'm trying to get 10 bad no's,
Wow.
right? And it's
I
like,
can't, I
okay, if I
wouldn't
got a
believe
no, then
it.
I'm like, okay, good. I got one no.
That's
And then if
really,
it's a yes, then
wow.
it's like, okay, great.
That's really cool. Thanks for telling me that. That's really inspiring, actually. So,
Well, I'm glad I could help. Anonymous asks, do you have any advice for newly graduated artists who want to enter industries such as animation, but who still feel very insecure and unconfident about their work? That's a
So
good one.
yeah, that is I feel like no matter what, just remember you'll always kind of feel some sort of insecurity and non-confidence towards your work. So try to remember that so that I feel like that's actually kind of good when you feel like that because it pushes you to try to improve. But if you guys do want to try to make your portfolio more noticeable, I feel like the best advice is trying to like maybe go on social media, see the artists that you like, how their portfolios are, see where they work, try to understand that type of the type of work they're putting out, and then also start to try to network. So, like for example, if you're in Los Angeles and you come to like these warrior painter meetups, there's a lot of people in the industry. So finding places where you can meet people and connect, kind of like organically, not kind of forced, would be a very helpful tip. And there's so many ways to connect with people online now. Try to be professional and kind when you guys are reaching out, because a lot of the times we all struggled to get our foot in the door. And I feel like people are willing to help most of the time, but you have to like approach it in the right way. So it's really hard because, like Bobby said, there's so many artists now, but try your best to be kind, nice, and put yourself forward and be vocal about what you want. And I think that would really, really help. And that's the best advice I could give, I guess. Yeah.
I generally, if I'm meeting somebody new, and especially before when not a lot of people knew me and stuff, I would just have more of a goal of like, how can I make it so I can contact them again?
That's a
And that's the
that's
goal,
cool. Yeah.
right?
What
Uh,
was your tip
uh,
or what did you find out?
it's not about trying to hit up as many people as you can. Events, you look for 5 people that are going to the event that you really, really would love to meet, and you study about them, right? You learn more about them so that if you do have the opportunity, you'll have a bunch of really good things to say to them or ask them. So, and I still do this when I go to like a big event. um, Lightbox, thought about who I would want to meet. Phil Lord was on there, Peter Lord, and Phil Lord, and a couple others. And then you think about the questions if you did ever meet them, right? Especially if you're listening to an interview, because they'll say something that is very maybe not a lot of people know, and then you have some sort of follow-up question for that, regarding that, they will feel like you put in the effort.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. Like when people feel like you care or put in the effort, that does make a big difference. Yeah.
Especially if it's something that people don't usually ask them, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's like
Yes.
soft skills.
101.
You don't want to ask the same thing that everybody else asks, or else you just become noise.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell like through this interview, you're really good at that. Like you're asking me a lot of questions that people have never asked before. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, these interviews, I'm literally asking everything that I want to know. So, or I think maybe helpful for others to know about.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, there are a couple more questions here. So this one is dealing with burnout and mental health. Sean asks, life always throws curveballs, and we have to take a break from art because life, uh, sorry, it just says life things sometimes. So, I'm sure we understand what that means. Um, my other question is when those things have happened in your life, burnout or mental health issues, was there anything that helped you get back into painting? Things that got you excited again if you were maybe down?
Um, so I have a very recent example where I just got back from vacation and I had to go straight back into work. And I felt really depressed for like 2, 3 days. I think the thing that helped me is to give, like, you just really have to give yourself some space. So I wasn't able to do a lot of my own personal work prior to this break. So I just spent 2 to 3 days just painting what I wanted to. And some days there are days where I just don't want to touch artwork at all. I would just tell my wife, let's go out and hike with the dogs and let's go eat something. And then, so there are some days where I don't do anything at all. And just do things that you like. So go see something new, go taste something new, go like experience like how the sun feels on your skin. Just get out of your house and go somewhere fresh and new. And I think that has really helped me get out of my burnout. But it's been taking longer and longer because I feel like my burnouts are also longer too.
Well, I like that answer. Uh, I like that answer, Angela. You know, a lot of burnout tends to come from things that are out of your control, things that are not currently in the present, but more like you're thinking about the future,
Yes.
right? And if it's both of them together, out of your control and the future, that's like that's a recipe for stress
Yes.
and burnout and mental issues. So like what you were saying, how you deal with it, you know, having the sun on your skin and things like that. Everything that you're saying, I don't know if you noticed, but they all are about being in the present.
I didn't know that, but yes, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a wonderful way to deal with mental health and burnout and stuff is not to think about the future, but to be in the present and just observe the present.
Yes, that is so true. Thanks for, yeah, analyzing that. I think I actually didn't realize before you said that it's because I often stress about things that are coming up. But yeah, just being present will help for sure.
Chris, Crystal asks, thank you for your insight. This is really great. I want to ask, how did you get to a point where you can start creating your own environments for concept art?
Um that is, I feel like even when I first started off drawing, like I always wanted to focus on like ideas too. So it's kind of hard because I think when you kind of don't have as much skill in the beginning, you get really discouraged because you can't bring your ideas to life. So I think you can work at it on it together, Crystal, where you are once again setting goals for yourself. So maybe in this one you want to just show that it's like a nautical based themed one, but you have to also figure out how to draw it in 2 point perspective. So the more like challenges that you slowly add to each step, the more that you could do. And eventually you'll get to a point where everything comes a little bit more easy. So I kind of view building up your skills to environment art as like Lego pieces, where maybe you have a general idea of where you what you want to construct, but each piece is kind of very important to formulating this entire like structure. So set goals and then balance it out with the ideas that you want, and then just keep going from there. Yeah.
That's great. And every study that you do is building more different Lego pieces that you can use,
Exactly.
right?
Sometimes like the Lego pieces might be really small and insignificant. Those are your bad paintings, but there are some that might be like the bigger blocks. So yeah.
And maybe in the very beginning, would you agree with this? In the very beginning, when you're just messing around with art, you have all the same pieces. They're all the same basic piece. You don't have a variety of pieces that you can do.
Yes, exactly. So it just changes the more you learn. So that's what's really fun about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about them as books. Like, a new artist is a person with a library with no books. And every time
That's
you
true.
do a study, you make a little book. The more you study, the thicker that book is. And you start filling up your library. So if anybody asks you a question, paint this, paint that, then you have these books that you can take out, out of your head and go, yeah, I remember learning that thing. And that thing combines with this thing, which creates the thing that you want
That's
or
so true.
whatever.
Yes. I like that one too.
Um, David asks, is there an issue with my question? So the question was training in storytelling and character design. You were mentioning that you don't really do character design.
Hmm.
Storytelling you have done in story moments. So
Yes.
maybe we can still answer David's question in regards to storytelling, story moments.
Yes.
Any advice that you could pass on
Um,
for
I
story
guess
moments?
for me, story moments, I think what I really want to do is convey emotions through color. So every single time that I try to channel in like story moments, I try to remember something really specific from something that I've experienced so that like when I paint that painting, it resonates with people more. So I guess if you really want to get better and you could train yourself for story moments, try to convey the emotions that you experience in your own life into a personal painting, and then think about the emotions that you want to like show through there. So um how is this sunset making me feel? How is this rainy day making me feel? Think thinking is going to be really important, especially for storytelling. So how do you convey these things, and how can I draw from my own personal experiences rather than copying somebody else's artwork where maybe you don't understand their full context. So really, I guess drawing from your own experiences is always going to help you with storytelling, and that's really helped me.
I love that answer as well, and I'll tell you why. Because as you're saying it, like you really hit the nail on the head, in my opinion, by saying, how does it make you feel? How do you want the person to feel? Because so much of beginner artists and sometimes intermediate as well, it's like they're so caught up in the design, the lighting, or whatever to make the lighting make sense technically or whatever, right? But maybe forgot that or didn't think about the fact that a beautiful movie that doesn't make you feel anything is not your favorite movie. It's not even
Exactly. Yes.
close,
Yes.
right? And the end goal is to make people feel something.
Yes. Yeah.
And that
I
isn't talked about
100%.
enough. No,
Yeah, it
that
isn't.
isn't
It
talked
isn't.
about enough.
Yeah, so I think when people comment on at least my artwork, when they say that, oh my God, like I could feel this lighting, I could feel this moment, I could smell the air in this painting, like I think those are the best compliments that I receive because they're feeling the things that I want them to. So I love that you say that like the movies that you feel the most for are the ones that you will remember. That's a really, really cool, yeah, observation.
I want to say that that's kind of like I want to say that that's a general rule for just about anything,
Yes,
songs, um, social media posts, right? Do you think
yes.
about like what is the emotion I want somebody to have by posting this piece of art?
Sometimes, like, I just want them to feel like most of my paintings are about daily life. It's like a slice of life from what I've experienced. So as long as they can kind of experience something that I felt in the moment of my painting, I think that I've accomplished something. So sometimes I feel like I'm more successful than the others, but yeah, as long as they're feeling like even like 30% of it, I'm like pretty happy.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, a question from the audience. Last year for plein-airpril, there was an insane demo with Minium. Uh, are there going to be other artists doing that this year?
Oh yes. So Bobby, to give you a little bit more context, Warrior Painters runs these April challenge called plein-airpril, and we paint every single day of the month. So last year we worked with Minyam to kind of create these demo series. This year we're gonna have demo series, and you could actually find more information on Warrior Painters Warrior Art Camp warriorartcamp.com. Just stay up to date with it. So we're gonna have some really cool artists this year too.
Fantastic. I remember bumping into a bunch of warrior painters, a bunch of warriors in Annecy.
Oh,
Were you
really?
there?
I
Yeah.
wasn't, but I know there were the paint sessions that happened.
I tried to make it out. I got caught up in something else. I couldn't make it, but I did see them from afar. I was like, oh, that's the warrior painters right there. I want to go and paint with them. Um,
Are you going this year?
cool. I am. If you're
Okay.
coming to Annecy, we can,
Yeah,
meet
we'll
up or
get to
something.
paint.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But you did like a giant meetup with the one and only James Gurney at Lightbox. That was
Yes.
epic. I was
Made
told
possible through you.
NBC
Yeah.
came.
Oh, yes, I think they came towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah, my
It was really
goodness.
fun.
Yeah, I missed that one as well,
I mean,
for
Lightbox
obvious
must be
reasons.
insane for you. So
It is, it is. We're talking about stress earlier on in the interview, and like, yeah, if I did not actively try to figure out how to have less stress, I would be, there would be so much stress, to be honest. Yeah,
I don't know how you handle it. But
it's a lot of effort, meditation, exercise, uh, even eating well.
yes,
Like,
eating well is so important. People don't realize that.
right, right. Like sometimes you eat badly and it's just like, or me anyways, I'm in a bad mood.
Yes,
And when I eat really well, I am in a noticeably very good mood.
because you can control it better. Like I don't think people know that like your stomach actually really controls how you feel. So
Mm.
yeah.
Um, there's that whole thing where it's like trust your gut, like as if your gut has its own brain. Um,
It's very true.
yeah. Christopher asks about resources, learning resources. Any specific learning resources like books, for example, that you would recommend to a beginner, or books that still help you out as a professional?
Um, there were a few like Nathan Fowkes books that were pretty helpful, and there's an artist that I really like. If you guys are interested in color, his name is Henry Henche. Um, he breaks down like how to view color very interestingly, and I think that's a really good book. I think it's online for free. I'm not sure, or the book itself on Amazon in America, it's only like $7. So I think that's a really like good reading book resource. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, this question, I want to make sure I say it correctly because you both have very distinct identities for sure, very distinct styles. But there is some sort of connective tissue between the vibe of your paintings and the vibe of Pixel P, and both of you are just crazy. So is that a California thing? What's going on there? Like, do you know where, like, and I'm saying the connection is really in the um generally, of course you do many different things, but you guys do this very, very well where you use very saturated colors that are light and you create your paintings that way. Where does
Hmm.
that come from?
So I did take his class several years back, so maybe that's kind of where it connects, but I think it's just maybe like kind of I think there's kind of that trend, especially with the first Spider-Verse, where the colors kind of like popped out like that. So people have been pushing it even more, but
Mm.
maybe also because of gouache and then the like basic sets of colors that we get to, it really influences like how we kind of like paint. So
Oh.
there's this specific color called lilac in gouache, and then there's also pink. So they come out as like really pleasing and beautiful colors that I you could just use straight out of the tube.
Hmm.
So maybe it's because our palettes are also the same as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, you guys are very different artists, but there is this little connective tissue that I see that's more prevalent in California than it is in any other part of the world, it seems.
Maybe he also set a trend too. So yeah.
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 Mendel is asking, is it Pixel P? Yes, Pixel P, Peter Chan. I don't usually like to say Peter Chan because there are at least three amazing Peter Chans. Uh,
Like the
yeah,
King
so.
Lees too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, okay, so next one is from Julia. So, in your opinion, can someone who is just educated online, say schoolism, can make it into the industry? I'm in a different field, and it seems, or it feels like a huge obstacle to cross from my current field to another.
I feel like it's extremely possible, and I've had many friends, especially on warrior painters, who actually it's kind of funny, Bobby. We actually run like schoolism uh sessions on warrior painter where we have to verify everyone has like a schoolism account, and then we like sometimes study together. That's so
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah, so I think a lot of people have found successes through places like schoolism, and I think it really helps prepare you for the skills that you need. And I know a lot of people switch over from like either medical or sciences to art, and they feel like that's a huge obstacle. But if you just keep studying and keep taking classes from like either schoolism or like warrior art camp, I think it'll just keep increasing your chances. So I think the thing is just to keep learning and learning from people who know what they're talking about. So let's say if you have something that you want to do and it happens to be background design and TV animation, I think studying from people who have worked in the industry and are currently working in the industry will get you the most up-to-date information and skills that you need to be working there. So really do your research about what you want to do. After you kind of understand what you do, you can then create this plan and take the right courses or talk to the right people to get those jobs. So I find that that's the most helpful. Like catered learning and very decisive learning is important.
Yeah, I'll add on top of that a little bit. If you're learning from somebody as good as Angela here or Nathan or, any one of these incredible instructors, um, not only are you learning from them, but you have an opportunity to show them your chops,
Yes,
right?
that's something that people don't realize. I feel like when you're taking a class, you're also showing them your work ethics too, right? And your
Right.
skills. Yeah.
Your work ethic, your how fast you improve, and your skill levels.
Hmm.
And there's been many, many times, like countless times, where um, a lot of studios will come to schoolism and go, who's good at this? Who's good at that? And then teachers would recommend, whatever students and things like that because it makes sense, right?
Yes.
Those people have had the experience working with you, seeing what you're about, and even more than that, seeing how fast you improve, how fast you learn.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Like, schoolism also offers the critique session, so I think that's really cool that they get the interaction between the teachers too. And I
Mhm.
think those, I personally find like that is the most helpful for me when you have the critiques. I don't know if you agree with that.
I like both for different
Mhm.
reasons. I've taken the critiques. Uh, I always take them under a pseudonym that
Oh,
nobody
really?
knows. Yes, so that they treat me just like anybody else. Because it might like I feel like people don't want to be picky if I hand something in and it's my name, right?
Really? Okay.
But they are definitely extra picky when I am not putting my name. I'm putting somebody else's name.
That's
Right?
smart.
Because also, if your skill level is higher and you hand something in, the instructor will feel bad if they just go, oh, that's good. All right,
Yes,
next.
that's
And then
true.
spend 20 minutes on the next person. They're going to dive deep and go, all right, this is some good stuff. Let's get really picky here. And that's what happens.
That's so true. That's a smart tactic.
Well, it started schoolism to take schoolism classes, really, to learn from others, 100%. Um, Anonymous asks, have you ever, there's a little bit of a spelling error here. Have you ever had a strategy? Did you, have you ever used a strategy to get better? Like actually sitting down and writing a plan for you to get better at painting sometime or setting times for studying. And if If not, how do you approach that? How do you know that what you're doing is the right thing if you're studying on your own?
That's a super good question that I feel like a lot of people get overwhelmed with because there's just too many things to study when it comes to art. So I think doing research is really important. What do I mean by research? So for example, if you want to focus on getting better at painting, maybe find like 5 artists that you really, really admire. Then do research on the things that kind of make a good painting. So from my experience, I think what makes a really good painting is very great design. And when I say design, it's kind of like clear reads, good design theories that are applied to the painting, and then very great cool and warm relationships. So understanding why you like the painting, then understanding what makes a good painting, and then you could structure the way that you study each artist to kind of accomplish different goals. So maybe within these 5 artists, you like 3 of them for their design, one of them for their color, and one of them for their lighting. You can slowly dissect and research and understand each part of it that really interests you, and then kind of cater your learning again to how you're breaking it down and studying. So you're just not mindlessly copying. I think I don't usually have a plan to get better, but I usually have a general direction by analyzing paintings like that. And I hope that helps.
What are the indications that your cool and warm colors have a good relationship?
So it's kind of complicated, right? So like within each hue, like the hue contrast already have cool and warms, but within each hue, you also have cools and warms. So like, for example, a red can be cool when it's leaning more towards magenta, or it could be warmer when it leans more towards orange. But when you place the magenta against like a cobalt blue, it doesn't feel as good if you like place it next to an ultramarine. So understanding the color relationships on a piece of paper where you don't think about them as specific colors alone, but you're thinking about them as color relationships on a paper, like a painting. And then really understanding how to place them next to each other to make your main character sing is super important, I guess.
So, what makes something not feel good besides something else? You know, you're saying cobalt blue and stuff. I just want to kind of dig in there and have you think about it as well if you haven't thought about it. Like, what is it that
I
makes one feel good with the other and not the
I think
second choice?
James Gurney kind of said it the best. He had this quote that I always use. He says that if your colors are feeling muddy, it's because your temperatures aren't right when they're next to each other. So maybe if a certain section of your painting is feeling a little bit off, you could try to take like either the shadow or the surrounding color and adjust it to be either cooler or warmer and push it towards an extreme rather than a neutral to see if that would help out. And then that's what I've been noticing. But what really sucks about painting is once you change one section, you have to kind of adjust everything else. So it's a really, really slow puzzle and process to make a painting feel right.
That's what I think it is too. Like, it's not necessarily this color and this color together feel right. Um, it's that this color and this color feel right together in the context of all of the other surroundings,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because like
yes.
if this world is very green, and green light and everything, you're not going to have certain reds in there. You wouldn't
Yes.
even have, sometimes you wouldn't even have reds. You would have things that perceive as red or that are maybe more towards gray even, right? A
Exactly.
dark
Yes.
gray.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Um, when you're trying to, let me think of a situation here. So when you're trying to create um, a new hue, contrast, or whatever, you could maybe it's a situation where a lot of it is blue,
Hmm.
like the whole entire image is very blue. Um, how do you know, how do you decide whether to hue change to something more contrasting with the blue, um, when you're trying to create something like orange or something, uh, or to just go less saturated?
That is super a really good question too, because sometimes, like you said, when you desaturate something, it just feels like the opposite. So one
Right.
thing that I noticed with painting is that the more you have something where it's like just generally, let's say blue, and you make something gray, it naturally feels orange because I think it's the complementary color kind of theory where when you place something against something that's surrounded by something that's predominantly blue, let's say, just by putting something that's neutral will cause it to feel like it's orange just by that contrast.
Right, but
So,
sometimes if you turn it to orange, it becomes too much.
yeah, but it's
So
because
when do you know?
you have to set up like rules within your painting and you just have to like that's another good thing. I can't really explain it, but I tell my students, sometimes you have to not go for the obvious and you have to be subtle and decisive about what you're doing. So it's like a case by case thing, but don't go for the obvious because when you put an orange, like Bobby says, it'll just feel too orange, right? So it's just about like fine tuning like the way that you adjust the color. And it's really about kind of how you place it within each piece to kind of determine how you want something to feel orange. It's really hard for me to answer because I feel like each case will kind of change. Yeah.
It's almost like a checklist of questions that you ask yourself to come up with your decision.
Exactly. So like you have to make very consistent rules. That's like one thing that I always remind myself. Remember the color of light, the shadow, the canopy color. Then you have to adjust it to like what are the local colors? What kind of bounce light is there? Is there bounce light? So there's a lot of rules that you have to establish and remember to make that painting feel right and to pick the perfect orange. Yeah.
Now, this question, I feel like I know the answer, but I feel like a lot of people will benefit from me asking it. And that is, in a lot of your paintings, you have this wonderful influence of a certain hue, right? And you would adjust all your colors so that it will all kind of align to say that this painting has a tinge of green, for example.
Mhm.
But then when you look at the paints that you're like the brush strokes that you're painting, an easy way, and I want to say a more beginner way, is to paint everything normal and then glaze over an influence of green and then touch it up and then you're finished. But you don't. You mix the colors thinking about the influence of green or whatever it is, right? So that you're painting very directly.
Mhm. I
Why?
love being interviewed by artists because they can see these things. So thank you. Yeah. I think that's my influence from gouache because I what I really like about gouache is that you have puddles of color. So let's just say like the building is generally, let's say, a red, but because there's like all green like atmosphere over it, you could kind of take that puddle of color and then mix it in with everything else. So I paint really directly because I have puddles of color on my palette. And I think if you kind of apply that same mentality to digital painting, that's how you can make your colors have a lot of depth. And I feel like gouache painting has really helped me with that. So yeah.
And that leads me to another question. Um, some people, they have very specific ways of arranging their color palettes. That's
Hmm.
super cool sometimes, like for example, hues and then grayscale and then everything in between, right? Like as they start to mix the different colors and do you is there any kind of a strategy to organizing the different hues in a certain order, perhaps?
For me, I do it so I have the 24 box jewel set that I was mentioning earlier, but I start off with white and I go from yellow to red to the browns then to the blues, and then to like the darkest color on the palette. So I do like kind of hue and then kind of values within the hue to organize my
Mm.
palette. Yeah.
So looking at the value of the hue also determines the order.
Yes, yes.
Cool. Awesome. Um, Reggie asks or says, loving the discussion. Angela, do you use fixative to finish your gouache paintings? And if so, what kind?
Sometimes I do, but most of the times I don't. I kind of like that matte look that gouache has. So just be really careful with your gouache paintings because you don't want it to smudge, but I don't really use a fixative.
Mm.
Yeah.
For your gallery paintings, do you do anything?
I
Or
just
is it
frame it
just
so there's like UV protective glass to it.
got it? Christopher asks, in your previous answers, you said that you chose a specific goal with each painting. What
Mhm.
are some things that you are still trying to improve in your work today?
What I really love about social media is that I get to see a vast variety of styles. So right now, rather than painting with a hard brush, I think I'm trying to paint more like with soft edges. So I'm trying to accomplish the balance between soft edges with colorful colors. So it's I'm kind of going through like this awkward teenage phase of combining things again right now, but I want to play with edges more while applying color vibrancy. So that's kind of my goal.
David asks, does Angela have any plans to develop her own IP projects as opposed to working on other people's IP?
That would be the dream, and I hope one day I can. So I'm actually taking classes at Warrior Art Camp too, because I want to get certain parts. So my next part will be learning how to storyboard. So I'm really excited about that. And I hope that once I have all these pieces, I could kind of come up with my own IP and pitch it.
Mm,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I've had my little experience with IPs and I have different kind of look on things. I feel like so because I've sold a bunch of IPs before my show, before Nico came out, and none of those other ones came out.
Did
Um,
the, yeah, is it because of the studios or?
because of the studios. So, you make your pitch, they option it, right? So they're the only ones that could develop it. They start to develop it with you. They start giving you notes that maybe
You don't
start to make your
want?
show something that you don't really recognize anymore. And then they cancel it and they're like, oh, no, it doesn't work anymore. And so that's happened to me, I think, like 2 or 3 times. Um, and then the Nico thing, but the Nico thing we put out as an animated comic book, so it exists in the world.
Hmm.
And that way, we're inspired by Harry Potter, really, or I was anyways, because she has these movies come out and she still owns the books completely. So it's like you're making a pitch that you can sell. Um, because it's tough. It's so
It's
many
really rough.
heartaches when you're trying to make your own your own IP. And I just find like if I didn't put it out there in that way, I it would be harder to deal with because nobody ever gets to see it in any way,
Yes, that's
right?
true. Is Schoolism gonna do the indie studio one day? That'd be really cool.
Uh, you know, well, there's Imaginism Studios, and that's what we
Yes,
put the comic book app Nico and sort of light out of. So there's definitely possibilities. There's definitely
I can't
possibilities, but
wait.
the thing is, it's just like figuring out how to make it worth it um, as a creator. Because a lot of times now, it's almost like you create so that you create a job for yourself.
That's true. Yes, yes.
If you only created it and then you sold the idea and have somebody else develop it, it almost doesn't. justify the amount of time and effort that you put in to make the pitch itself.
That's true.
Yeah. Like I think you probably heard that thing where it's like the person that created Squid Games didn't get much money at all.
I heard that. Yes, that's crazy. And that was like a global phenomenon. So it's like crazy. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
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 And it's not like it's all about the money, but like somebody got the money,
Yes.
and that's not that fair if it's not spread out evenly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, sorry, I'm just chatting because
No, no, no.
I
I
just tend
love
to do
it.
that.
I love it.
Um, let's go to one last question here. Would you recommend to learn different things at the same time period, during the same time period? For example, getting better at color and lighting, but also learning character design? Or would it be better to do one first and then the other and so on? So like concentrated learning or learning a couple of things so that hopefully maybe there's some connective tissue between the different subjects. What are
I
your
feel
thoughts?
I feel like art is kind of cool because everything is kind of connected with each other, right? So let's say you're learning figure, but figure drawing actually has to do a lot with perspective. So people think that when you're learning figures, you're not really thinking about perspective. So I feel like if you're the type of person who can manage learning multiple things at once, but like you focus on specific things when you're learning like multiple things, it might be really helpful. So for example, I'll use figure drawing as an example. Learning ellipses and how contours are broken down within like the thighs, for example, will really help you understand how things are reacting to space. So that's a good way to combine learning, in my opinion. And like for color and lighting, they're kind of separate but together at the same time because lighting influences the way that you color things. So you can learn these things together, but you have to understand how you can place them together. And once you have that like idea, it makes it easier to learn rather than making it really complicated and overwhelming for yourself. Yeah.
Fantastic. One last question,
Okay.
Angela.
Okay.
Something that I generally ask everybody. If you could go back and thank somebody from your past. Oh my gosh. If you could go back and thank somebody from your past, somebody that taught you something that was really truly special or did something for you that was truly special, who would you want to thank and what did they do?
There's so many, I mean, maybe two people. Like I'd like to thank my mom for encouraging me to do art. And then it's kind of crazy. I was in high school at the time and I was deciding what I should do for my career. I emailed Feng Zhu and I didn't think he would respond. And I asked him, like, do you think art is worth pursuing? And he actually wrote a really long email to me and told me that it's worth pursuing, but he told me about the hardships that I might encounter. So he really helped me make the decision to do art, and now like I am doing what I love, and I think it has a lot to do with him.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. This has been a blast. It was just a joy just to talk with you in length and learn much more about you and your journey.